Everybody, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert, and welcome. We are going to be answering some questions that people might have about the entire job search process. That's what I'm here for. And of course, to crack jokes, which I'm well known for. Anyway, any questions about job interviews, about how to discover jobs, how to apply for jobs, things you put on your resume, all that kind of stuff, it is all on the table. You should see a chat right next to the main video at the right-hand side. Type your questions. I will see them. I will answer. Captain Average is here. I love your name, by the way. That's awesome. It's good to be known for something. I was a little flummoxed this morning. Have you ever been flummoxed? I think it's good. It sort of keeps you from getting above yourself. Usual struggle with my technology this morning. But we're here and we're in the now. So let's get to it. Formerly known as Free Guy 2.0. I recognize Free Guy 2.0. I remember that name. You've been participating on these before. So awesome. Welcome. Yes. So somebody sent me a comment on one of my videos. I don't have the comment in front of me. I can't remember who it was from, but they said something along the lines of, I recommended a friend of mine for a job and he got the job, or he or she got the job. And, but they keep screwing up. What can I do to protect my reputation? Because I've recommended this person. They keep screwing up. Well, whoever sent that in, this is kind of a lesson for everyone. This is why you want to be a little bit sparing with your recommendations. Don't recommend somebody or put someone forward unless they can deliver the goods. They're not gonna underperform. They're not gonna embarrass everybody because your reputation is now tied to them. So that's the issue. To answer the question, I would say just go and talk to them. Go and look, do you need some help? And just do it in a very sensitive way and sort of talk to them and say look, not the way you do these things is you don't sort of draw attention to the negative things. You say look, you focus on being able to help. Maybe it would be a good idea to have this. If you need help, there's this. Here, let me show you how you do this properly, or let me explain something to you. That kind of thing. Daryl P is here. Daryl P says, how to respond when at the end of the interview they say, well, we have a few more interviews today. Listen, that is the type of people who say that kind of thing are people that have surprisingly poor social skills for people that their job is to interview candidates. Okay. One would think that if your job as a recruiter or an interviewer is to interview people, is to deal with a lot of people, you would be good at it, right? You would think that, right? Well, those of us who have lived in the world for a while, you probably noticed that a lot of people that are in those jobs aren't. You know what I'm saying? They're not good at dealing with people. They're rude, they're arrogant, they're entitled. They don't seem to realize that just because they know something, that isn't obvious to everyone else. You know what I'm saying? That has actually a name. That thing, whatever, that concept has a name in psychology. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know the name, but whatever you call that, they're lacking in it, a lot of them. So one of the things you do is if someone comes in for a job interview and you are interviewing them, you're a recruiter or something, don't talk to them about all the other clients you've got to deal with, all the other candidates. That makes them feel bad. It makes them feel like, oh, I'm just one of a whole bunch and I guess I should stop wasting your time. It's very unwelcoming and it's very unprofessional. Professional people who act professional, they act in such a way as to make the other person that they're dealing with love dealing with them. Okay. And part of that is not making them feel like they're unimportant or, they're not the center of your attention, things like that. You want everyone who comes up and deals with you to feel like they're the most important person to you right now. That's what you want to make them feel. So This is why if you see diplomats or ambassadors or people like that, they usually don't do that kind of thing and they don't say things like this. So the question is, how do you respond at the interview when they say that to you? Well, if you want to take the high road, which I recommend, okay, you just say, well, thank you very much for your time. Something like that. You just don't respond to it in kind of a negative way. It's an insensitive thing to say. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's bordering on that. It sort of separates the people who are amazing at interacting with others from the people who are just regular people who have no particular talent at doing it. Okay, so that's what I would say. Dan Fleming is here. Hello, Dan. Dan says, I gave a remote interview where in the second interview, I was told bluntly, we lost the recording of the first interview, so we're going to ask you the same questions again. Okay, well, listen, it kind of depends how you say it. Now, I guess you continue here. You say, isn't that very rude, or it's just me? It depends how they say it. I mean, I hate to go into this kind of thing. It's not what you said. It's how you said it. But it's true. If they're very apologetic and they say, like, look, we're terribly sorry. We know this is inconvenient, but we've misplaced our notes from the first interview. So we'd like to basically ask you the same questions again, if that's okay. If they say it like that way, sure, not a problem. Hey, that's absolutely no problem at all. I'm here to accommodate. I'm sorry to hear that. And don't worry, I'm sure we can fix the whole thing today. So I'm excited. Okay, so if they say something like that in that way, great. If they're more blunt, like I think you said somewhere along the line, they're very blunt. Basically what that signals is we're incompetent, especially me, and I don't care. That's what they're saying. Now, how do you respond to that? I don't think you need to respond to that. You just it's nice to know who I'm dealing with here. Helps me make an informed decision if you offer me the job, if I decide to take it, or how I negotiate. Obviously, if you don't get offered the job, it doesn't matter, right? But you don't need to respond to that at all. You just say, not a problem. And then don't let anything that they say make you respond in a less than 100% positive way. Okay? Up until the point where they really cross the line and say something insulting or just totally inappropriate or anything like that, up till they cross that line, don't let anything that they say cause you to respond in any way that's less than 100% positive. And that goes for body language, that goes for explicitly what you're saying. Okay? So stupid little comments like this that they say, okay, that signal their, inadequacy. They're basically wearing a sign that says, why would you want to work here? We're a bunch of idiots, We all know this, okay? But you don't respond to that, because if you do, you lose. Okay, if you call them on it, you lose. It's a very unequal exchange. That's just how it works. Okay, so that would be my way of handling that. Always positive. WKC Champion says, hello, Bill. Thanks to your videos, I landed a job in Switzerland. Holy crap. You are awesome. Oh, and my name is Marco. Marco, you are awesome. I guess it sounds like you're not from Switzerland. So what do they do in Switzerland? They climb mountains, they use Swiss Army knives, they make cuckoo clocks, they yodel, they wear lederhosen, and I think they eat fondue, right? So you got some training to do, buddy. Congratulations. That's great to hear, and you deserve the entire thing. Dan Fleming says, no, there was no apology, and that's why I said it was very bluntly. Yeah, okay, well, and then I found it very unprofessional. Yes, because it is unprofessional, Dan. You're absolutely right. Look, when somebody comes cap in hand, basically asking for a job, okay, that's kind of the vibe of a lot of job interviews. That's really not what's going on, but that's how it feels. Okay, if you're a candidate and you go onto their turf, and they set the rules. They control the interview. They're in charge of the exchange. That's how it feels. Maybe there's more than one person. There's like a panel of people interviewing you. It's a very asymmetric kind of power relationship. And in that situation, what professional people do is, if they're the ones in control, you have to be super polite and super sensitive to the other person, or they have a very unpleasant time. That's just the nature of these exchanges. Okay. And we see that not just in job interviews, in any kind of negotiation or conversation or whatever, that's just how it works. Okay. And if you are anything less than like super sensitive and super polite and super friendly, other people can come away from it feeling very bad about it and very bad about you. Okay. This is kind of common knowledge, but it's surprising how many people that do job interviews don't seem to realize this. Sometimes it's also intentional. It's I don't know if I can say this on YouTube, but it's like little Hitler syndrome. It's like people whose power just goes to their heads. They are in charge of interviewing people. They're the gatekeeper. That has a lot of power. A lot of people want to be very nice to them, and that goes to their head. And they start to get notions like, oh, I don't need to be polite to people. I don't need to be considerate to people because look, I'm not considerate, I'm not polite, and I'm getting away with it. Right? That must be because I'm very important. And they equate that behavior with importance and power, which is not true. So we see this, unfortunately, too much. Okay, so if that's happened to you, don't worry, you're not alone. Okay? Unfortunately, you have to tolerate a certain amount of that. This is one of the reasons why I advocate that people get jobs through alternate methods, where you don't have to go through a recruiter, because at the end of the day, if one thing's for sure, it's that you don't have to deal with this kind of disrespect. You sort of avoid all that. The encounters you have with people are more sort of person to person, not like master slave. I'm up here, you're down there. It's not like that. Okay, Daryl P says, how soon should I follow up after the first interview, and should it ever be a phone call or keep it an email? Okay, first of all, how soon should you follow up? There's absolutely no law or limit or recommendation for, how soon you can do it. You could do it half an hour after you leave the interview. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I would do it either the same day or the next day, but no later than the next day. Okay, the next business day. So that's the timeline. Now you're asking if it should be a phone call or an email. Now listen, here's a trade-off that we all know, okay? Emails and DMs are easiest to do, right? And a lot of people who are introverts like me, your natural tendency is to send a message rather than call somebody up on the phone and have a voice conversation in real time with them. Okay. Some people get very, very nervous about the prospect of doing that, being able to call someone, especially, remember what we were saying about the asymmetric power relationship? It feels like you're down here and they're up here. For you to call them, a lot of people really, really shy away from that. And I used to too when I was a lot younger, before I realized that it's all just an illusion. It's all in your head. There's absolutely nothing wrong with calling them. Now, a phone call is much more effective for the very same reason, okay? Because it's a more real form of communication. The best is face-to-face, okay? If you can't do that, then a video call would be sort of the next one down. If you can't do that, a voice call, like a phone call, would be the next one down. And then if you can't do that, some kind of message, email, DM, whatever, okay? The best, the most effective in terms of persuading them that you're awesome and you're interested in the job, okay, the most effective thing at doing that would be the highest level one, be the face-to-face. If you could do that, that has the most power, okay? Failing that, a video call, failing that, a phone call. So the phone call is much more effective, okay? And also, the very fact that it's harder to do also is a signal that, you're much more interested, you're exerting much more effort towards following up with them. Okay. So phone call is most effective, and I would do it like as soon as possible. Okay. Same day or at the latest the next day. Navjeet says, hi, Navjeet. Hey, if you're here in the chat, I see there's 28 people here. Get in the chat, say hi, say hello, greetings, whatever form of greetings you use. Some people use very elaborate ways of greeting. Like "what's up," right? If you're from 1996 or whatever that was from. Anyway, Cat Twong. I'm sorry. I'm absolutely terrible with names. I apologize for anybody's name that I mispronounced, like I just did. No offense meant. Excuse me. I just graduated and managed to get a position at Lego. Wow. Is it Lego or Lego? If you're American, I think you go Lego. Right? I'm going to cook up some eggs. I'm going to feel it from top of my head down to my legs, that kind of thing. So Lego. Your tips for employment really helped me out. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Thank you so much. And I'm glad that it worked out. Kat, congratulations. And like I said before, you deserve it. Okay. If you're trying to self-improve, if you're trying to learn this stuff, you deserve it, because these are skills and abilities that last you your whole career, certainly, and oftentimes your whole life. WKC champion. I am from Italy, IT software and banking sector. Oh, okay. So you know your stuff then. Navjeet says, hello, how you are mentor? I am a mentor. In a way, I do these live streams and some videos. How is USA work culture environment to India? Listen, improving English grammar is a really good thing. Today we have spell checkers, grammar checkers. So the more of that you do, the better. I don't fully understand how you mean, but Navjeet, but that's what you mean. But that's a very general question, I can tell. I can't really get into that. And besides, I'm not in the United States. I'm in Canada. So Navjeet says, I have one question. Okay. Sure. Feel free to ask it. Anybody who's got a question, feel free to ask it, and I'll do my best to try and answer it. Dan Fleming, I wish there were more movies about HR and working, like Office Space from 1999. There's such a missed opportunity for really funny movies which could be based on real experiences. Yeah, they used to have a comic called Dilbert. I don't know if they still have Dilbert. I didn't read it regularly or anything, but you'd occasionally see they'd make fun of office type situations. Oh, HR is hilarious. A lot of areas of business are hilarious in that it's a comedy of errors. If it wasn't so malicious, it would be funny. Okay, it's sort of like a real life walking, talking joke. That's one of the reasons why I do this channel, because people that do recruitment and selection, a lot of them are just so unsuited to their jobs and ignorant of how to do their jobs. B, you get a lot of people doing that activity that are just nasty, just mean and insensitive to people. I know that you have to have a certain amount of a thick skin to a degree, but I mean, come on. And it's so ineffective. It's completely ineffective. If you gauge HR, they use a lot of metrics, KPIs, to sort of evaluate the performance of the HR department and their work that they do. They look at things like employment retention, average length of employment. They look at things like average revenue per employee, average net income per employee, things like this. They have all kinds of metrics. And a lot of them, at least certainly the average length of employment, it's going in the wrong direction. And it has been for a couple of decades. And HR is trying to trying to shift to that. But even in the last, I don't know, 5-10 years, like look what I'm doing. I mean, this whole YouTube thing. I mean, there's a wave of people that are sort of deciding, corporate jobs are not for me. I'm tired of dealing with recruiters. I'm tired of dealing with bad bosses. I'm going to go and make money on my own. And we're seeing that also now, which is another sort of testament to how corporate HR departments are failing. They're not attracting talent, they're not retaining talent, and they don't look appealing to more and more people in the labor market. So yeah, it would be wonderful to do a really good comedy. They would have a gold mine of material to pull from. So I agree with you, Dan. Daryl, I recently applied for a sales position. Should I call the company and try to find out who the hiring manager is, or should I find out who the sales manager is and introduce myself? Well, yeah, there's no harm in doing that. I don't know that does too much good. I mean, I guess it could. It signals that you're interested. If you're okay with doing that kind of thing, sure. The reason why I'm a little hesitant about that is because it's kind of like you're applying the wrong technique to that method of getting a job. If you're okay calling up a company and discovering who the decision maker is and getting patched through to them and talking to them, if you're okay with doing that, why don't you just go the whole 9 yards, just a little bit further, and use that method to get the job, okay? Instead of applying for a posted job first and then doing all this kind of activity, you can get a much better job by doing this activity first before the company even applies for a job. Number one, it saves them a ton of work. You see, they've already posted the job. What a lot of candidates don't realize is that when a company posts a job, there's a lot of work that has to happen internally to make that happen. And that's expensive, okay? Imagine if you're employing a department full of people, okay? And you have them working on several things. Like one of the things, it consumes several hours of people's time per week, okay? So because you're paying these people, you can easily sort of convert that time that they're spending on it to dollars and cents, right? Like, so, okay, we've got these 4 people that spent 4 hours on this, creating this job that we just posted. And then we spent another 16 man hours promoting it on social media, posting it on the website, and putting it online, blah, 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 right? Several people had to work on that. Several people had to approve it. It took time away from even high executives and things. They had to approve it, right? So you're consuming everybody's time to do this. Now, at the end of the day, it can cost thousands of dollars to just post a job so that all the things in the job description are all approved by several people. They've all been discussed. The posting has been done. It's been promoted online. And that's even before you get to taking everybody's time to do interviews. So it's a very expensive process. So one of the things that's great for a company, if you call ahead of time and say, look, I don't know if you're looking, but just so you know, I'm a great, software engineer or whatever. I do this kind of work. I solve this problem. And, I would love to work for your company because I know you guys do exciting work in this area. So if ever you're looking for someone like that, just please give me a call. Thank you very much. Have yourselves a great day. That's all. If you sort of make that call and that lands in the lap of a decision maker, like a hiring manager, a department head, something like that, at the right time, they go, oh my God, I might not have to post this job. I might not have to allocate $5,000 from my budget or whatever it is to go through the process of, posting a job. I'll just call this person and we'll have a conversation. And if this person looks promising, maybe we could just hire them and save us all the headaches of rounds of interviews and all this expense. Okay. So if you're willing to do that, a lot of people aren't. You're kind of a minority. Only people that are in sort of sales and possibly customer service usually want to do that activity. So if you're willing to do that, just go the whole 9 yards and get a job that way. And there's far more jobs out there that get than the ones that get posted. 80% of the jobs that are out there get filled this way before they actually get posted, because employers, the decision makers, the managers within the companies, they want to fill them before they have to be posted. And when I say this, I get all kinds of people being surprised about it. It's absolutely true. Don't take my word for it if you don't believe me. Go and verify this. You will see this is exactly what happens across industries, across countries. That's how it works. Where was I here? Here. Is that Joni Soares? Is that how you say that? Joni? Greetings from Brazil. Greetings. There's some people there that are doing some stuff this week. I'm a software engineer, and your content is generally helping to climb up the career ladder. Well, great. Thank you. That's it's good to know. That's and it's awesome that you're consuming it and taking it to heart. That's great to hear. Congratulations. And thank you for saying so. You're brightening my day by saying this stuff. How do you say this? Shanzi? Shanzi's 2 cents? No question today, but glad I made it. Well, thanks for being here, Shanzi. I appreciate your participation, and hopefully you're getting something out of it. You don't necessarily have to ask a question. You could always tell me how handsome I'm looking today, and how wise are the things that I'm saying, and how much of a beautiful speaker I am. All those would be acceptable. So just some ideas there. Navjeet says, Dear sir, how's USA and Canada work culture and environment different from India? Oh, you added Canada in there. But how dare you spell Canada with a lowercase c? If you'd capitalized Canada, then I might have talked longer on it. Well, like any country, it's different in some ways, and it's the same in others. Once again, that question is too general for me to answer in a live stream. I'd be talking for 2 hours. Go and do some research on it. Okay, there's a lot of stuff out there, and that you can find it. If you are watching videos on my channel, okay, you're sort of perhaps getting an idea of how things work generally in Canada, the US, Europe, a lot of the West. Certainly a lot of things are universal, but particularly those. Okay, Europe is I'm making sweeping generalizations here, but it's a little bit different to like the Americas, like North America, South America. But yeah, just do your own research on that. I can't really help you too much with that here. Dan Fleming, any specific advice for people into software development about how to approach behavioral interviews? Is there something specific you can think of about people in this area? Okay, first off, practice makes perfect, okay? I can't emphasize this enough, Dan. It's one thing to sort of prepare by yourself and, figure out answers to common questions, figure out what you're going to say. That's one thing, and that's how we start. But you need to do more than that. You need to grab a buddy, a friend, a family member, a parent even. I don't know, whoever you have around, and get them to do practice interviews with you where they ask you behavioral questions. Okay? The thing about behavioral questions is that there's an infinite number of them out there. It's really impossible to try and anticipate the exact questions you could be asked because there's just so many. And if you don't believe me on this, go to Google and type in behavioral question and then whatever job, like behavioral question, software engineer. You'll see there's sort of like an unending list. Okay? You cannot prepare for every single question you could be asked. It's just impossible. So the short answer is, you get several stories of your accomplishments in your head, like you've rehearsed them. You practiced saying them in a very compact way, like usually the STAR method or some variant of it. And no matter what they ask you, if they're asking you for like a story, okay, you're going to be pulling out one of those say 10 stories, and you're going to be telling it in such a way that answers their question. Okay. So that's the short way of doing this. Now, you need to practice this. Okay. The other thing about behavioral questions is that the interviewer who's asking you these, they're operating on the principle that past behavior predicts future behavior. Okay. So the idea, and it's a very simplistic kind of idea, is that if you've been in a situation before at work and you handled it a certain way, what they're saying is that if they hire you, they're pretty sure you will handle it the same way again. Okay, now we all know that for a start, that's not necessarily true. So the stories you tell, make sure that, how you handled whatever situation it was, that's how you would handle it if you were put it in that situation again today. Okay? So things like that, you've got to sort of make sure that that's one of the reasons why we prepare these stories, right? Because not only is it the thing that you did in the past, but it's the thing that you did that was the right way. A lot of times we learn, we progress, like when you're first starting out at your first job you've ever had in your life and they put you in a situation and then you handle it a certain way. A lot of times that's not the way you would do it again, because you've learned that there's better ways of handling it, right? So you wouldn't tell that story, for example, right? Okay, so you got to get your stories together, practice saying them in a very compact way. You can't take 10 minutes to tell a story or to answer a question. Like practice telling these stories in like 45 seconds. You just give the essentials. I was here. This is what my job was. I was tasked to do this. This is what I did. This is how it turned out. And then this is maybe what I learned or what people thought of me for doing it that way. Just bam, 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 bam. There you go. There's a story. Okay. Nice and compact. Make sure it's appropriate. Make sure it represents you and it's the right thing to say. And then memorize these, get them on the tip of your mind. Then when you go to the interview, no matter what they ask you, you're going to pull out some variation of that. You won't have to sit there trying to think of an answer. You've got all the answers right there, ready to go. And that's how you do it. Okay, but practice, practice, practice. Deuce says, should I have to tell my current employer my new job offer, where and how much they are going to pay me? Absolutely not. In fact, you do not want to do that. Do not do that. First of all, it's none of their business, okay? They are not your parents. They don't have the right to know what you're doing in every facet of your life, okay? Right? If you are talking to another employer, that's none of their business, okay? And it has been known that if you give this information to your current employer, they can sabotage you. They can call up your new employer. Now that they know where you're working, they can call up your new employer that you're gonna move to or something and say, oh, I just thought you'd like to know. We found that employee. Like, I understand they're going to come to you. We found them drinking on the job. We found them, doing whatever. And then they sabotage your job offer so that your new employer then retracts the job offer. That has been known. Okay. If you don't want to disclose to them how much the new company is paying you, you shouldn't. And if you don't know, I would just keep it a secret. It's personal, it's confidential information. It's like someone saying, what's your credit card number and how much tax did you pay last year? We don't usually volunteer that, right? For that reason. Navjeet says, Dear Sir, how to face U.S. companies' interviews. I don't know. You could watch my channel for a start. Jason Speed says, hey, no questions. Just happy to be here. All the best to everyone else. That's very nice of you, Jess. Jason Speed. It's nice to have you here. Scott Gates. Bill Gates's less famous younger brother. I applied for a job back in November. I emailed the recruiter to ask if the position was still available. She says they are still working through next steps at this time. Is this a red flag? Listen, first thing you got to know about recruiters, practically everything out of their mouth is a lie. They are masters of not wanting to deal with something with a candidate, so they just say the most convenient thing. Oh, it's still in process. Oh, that job is on hold right now. Oh, we haven't made a decision yet. Right? So just keep that in mind. Okay, if it's something that happened back in November, now it's January, you haven't heard anything, 98%, 99% chance it's a no, whatever it was. It's not happening. Sorry, but that's the reality, okay? Scott, listen, you're awesome, okay? You're talented, you're employable. Keep looking forward. Concentrate on applying for new jobs, for generating new opportunities for yourself, okay? And don't look back. You do interviews, you send out applications, okay? You make connections, all that kind of stuff. If it results in a job offer, great. If it doesn't, that's okay. There's nothing you could have done differently. You know, this process is fraught with a huge amount of random probability. They just happen to be looking for someone exactly like you when you come along. That's usually how people find employment, right? Okay. Now, if there's no connection there between the two, it's not your fault. It's not your doing. It's no commentary on your value or your employability. It just, you've got to keep moving forward and find that one company who's out there right now, who's looking for someone exactly like you, but you just haven't connected with them. You guys are not connecting with each other, okay? So keep moving forward. Don't look back. Don't wait for the phone to ring. Always be moving on to the next opportunity, because sooner or later, one will work out, okay? But you can't force these situations. That's just how it goes, okay? And I would put very little currency or hope in a recruiter getting back to you, okay? They love to say anything to make people say. Any interaction with the recruiter, something I've noticed over the years, is that they'll say absolutely anything to get you to have a positive reaction and go away. So that's one of the reasons that they say, oh yeah, you know, we're still thinking about it. You know, we'll call you if somebody comes up and you're like, oh, okay, so I still have a chance. Meanwhile, no, the decision has already been made. You didn't get it, but they don't want to tell you that because you might have a bad reaction, right? Wow, here we go. Lauren Hicks sent a super chat. Good morning. Do you think relocation is worth it for internships? I have an operations management internship offer from Amazon. Thank you. Listen, Lauren, there's no blanket answer to that. I mean, it depends what your goals are. If you are absolutely enthralled with Amazon and you really want like some kind of employment opportunity with Amazon in the future, so doing an internship with Amazon is very important to you, Amazon specifically. Okay, or maybe you don't care about Amazon, but you know, you could work somewhere else. But the internship from Amazon would really be a feather in your cap when you put that on your resume. Okay, maybe that's the appeal. So you really want that internship. If that's the case, then yes, relocation is reasonable, depending on details, to do that. Okay. But if you're just looking for something, okay, you're just looking for something. It doesn't have to be Amazon. It doesn't have to be an internship. It could be anything. Then I would say, like, relocation would be a last resort. You know what I'm saying? You should be able to get something, presumably, where you are, okay, depending on details, right? For most people, they'll be able to get something where they are, okay? So it depends what your goals are, okay? Some people relocate, like, for example, okay, I'm in Winnipeg, Canada. Winnipeg, Canada, it's a reasonably big city. It's got like 700,000 people or something. But it's not It's not like a really big city. Now, certain industries are not concentrated here. If you want to be in the fashion industry and you're in North America, you would relocate to like New York or Paris or, I don't know, possibly LA, right? Like those are the centers of those industries. If you're an accountant, right, you can get accounting jobs everywhere. So if you're just looking for an accounting job, you should be able to get something in your hometown or your local area. Okay. Now, if you're hell bent on becoming the CFO of a Fortune 500 company, then you might have to relocate. Okay. So, I mean, it depends on what your goals are. Okay. Sorry, that's kind of a wishy-washy general answer, but it's true. Okay. So if you do have any follow-up details, feel free to share them here and I can go deeper. But thank you very much for the super chat. You're awesome. You're welcome, Deuce. Daryl says, when writing a cover letter, do I address it as Dear Hiring Manager or what would be the best? Well, listen, ideally a cover letter, you would know who you're sending it to, okay? Don't just say to whom it may concern. You know, that's like usually an excuse to ignore it, right? In all honesty, I have very little use or time for cover letters. It seems like they're a relic from the past. Usually, in this day and age, the cover letter is sort of like if you're sending a job application, the cover letter is the body of the email, you know, where you say, dear, you know, whoever the email is to the recruiter, to the hiring manager, whoever, you know, you're sending it to, you know, dear John, you know, whatever. Please find my resume attached. I'm applying for this position. Please find my resume attached and my application attached. I have this that you seem to be looking for. So, you know, this is the best way to contact me. Here's my email. Here's my phone number. I look forward to meeting you if we do an interview. Something along those lines, right? And that's it. Like, that's really all you do. Now, I know some weird employers like governments and things, they require you to do some weird fancy cover letter where basically you just regurgitate bits of your resume, but in sentence form, you know, or if you haven't listed accomplishments on your resume, you would describe them in the cover letter, or you answer specific questions. But, you know, those are usually for lower level jobs. So your resume is in my experience, your resume is by far the most important document. People usually don't read cover letters, and the cover letter can actually be very short. Here's why I'm applying. Please find this attached, you know, and then I have this, and this, like all the things that they said they were looking for, you know, so it seems like I'm a fit. I look forward to having an interview. Here's my contact information. There you go. You know, but in that case, you would know who you're sending it to, okay? If you don't know, the standard thing is to whom it may concern. And if you're sending in a generic job application to, like, you know, a company's website or a generic account, it usually goes to a recruiter, not a hiring manager. So I would address it. If you want to try and address it to a person, I would address it to a recruiter. Okay, dear recruiter, or, you know, I would just say to whom it may concern. Keep in mind, just as an aside, that's usually not the best way of getting a job. That's usually one of the least productive ways of getting a job. Just sending in generic applications. You don't know who it's to. You don't have any kind of personal connection whatsoever with them. You haven't interacted with them outside of the job application. That's usually, it produces the least results. Navjeet says some really nice things. You're absolutely welcome, Navjeet. I'm glad that it's working out for you, and I wish you the best of luck. Okay, another person. I can't read. Is that Arabic? I can't read. I have an interview tomorrow. How do I convince the recruiter to agree to my salary and working hours expectations? Oh, you can't. You can't. That's not how it works. You can't convince someone to agree to something that they don't want to do. It's like saying it's like a recruiter saying, I want to talk to you. Okay. How do I convince you to work for me for free? Right? Unless you have something like amazing to offer, like you're going to be the assistant to your personal hero or something. You can't persuade someone to do that. Like the only question is, are they willing to do that or not? This job pays X amount of money. Does that work for you or does it not? That's all you need to know. A lot of candidates, they're so unprepared. They come to a job interview and they haven't thought through how much money they would need for the job to make sense for them. So the only thing you can do is figure out what your position is. If you go in there thinking like, okay, I would like something that pays, I don't know, $60,000 a year, but I'm prepared to take up to 40, down to 40, but anything below 40 just doesn't make sense for me. I won't be able to make rent. I won't be able to afford food, like whatever. Right? So I know that I'm not going to accept anything under 40, period. It's just not happening. It's not a matter of persuading someone. They have to persuade you to take it. It doesn't make sense. So you can be sure that they know their position, okay? You need to know yours. Sometimes those will overlap, sometimes they won't, okay? It's not about persuading people, it's about knowing your position. And you usually don't deal with that until the very end of the process when they offer you a job. If they haven't offered you a job, it's irrelevant. They say, would you be okay with this money? You say, sure, whatever. Honestly, I know that sounds kind of disingenuous, but it's actually not. They're taking advantage of the fact that they haven't told you a lot of the details of the job. And then they're asking you, how much money do you need for it? And you say, oh, I do it for this. They say, oh, great. And then they give you a job offer. And then, oh, by the way, it's shift work. And, you have to work with a bunch of psychopaths. And you have to do 18-hour shifts. And things like this. You find out that stuff later. You have an abusive boss. Had you known that at the time when they asked you for your salary requirements or your compensation expectations, you'd have said something different, right? Well, that's why they ask you these type of stupid questions in a job interview. Number one, it's to filter you out. And number two, it's to try and get you for cheap in a really underhanded way, in a very deceptive kind of way. So the only time you really seriously discuss compensation is after you've been given an offer. Everything that they talk about before they give you an offer to do with salary or compensation, it's not because they want to have a serious conversation about compensation. It's because they're trying to filter you out. Okay? So you say what you say just to get through those filters, so you pass them. Okay? They're disingenuous anyway, because you don't know what you're getting into at that point. Okay. But that's a good question. Lauren Hicks, I'm currently on the beach for professional. You're on the beach? I'm in the Arctic right now. That's what it feels like. And ever since COVID started, I haven't really traveled. I was actually going to go on a cruise right as COVID was starting. And I was with my family and we were kind of on the fence, and I canceled it at the last minute. And I'm so glad I did, because that's when all the people got stranded on the cruise ships. The cruise ship becomes like a plague boat, and then they're on there for weeks and people are dying. And ever since then, I still haven't really traveled because of that. So I'm totally jealous of you, Lauren Hicks. I'm currently on the beach for a professional role with my current company. Okay. I don't want to step down to an internship, even though Amazon would look great on a resume. I see. Okay. This is the follow-up to your super chat there. Okay. I don't want to step down an internship for Amazon. Great on a resume. I wish I knew what you meant by beach. Bench? No, the A and the N are far apart on the keyboard. Just give me a second here. Well, here you go. You've got a decision, it seems, between an internship that could look really good or a professional role which pays the bills immediately, right? Now, once again, the deciding factor for that is going to be your situation, right? If you're secure financially, then maybe taking an internship would make sense. If you're more desperate for money, you need that inflow of cash, then maybe just the professional role, right? That's all I can really say to that, unless there's more information. On the bench, there we go. Okay, good. And I feel better now that you're not on a beach and I'm sitting here. No, that makes more sense. But yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, once again, it depends on your situation. Listen, what you could try and do is hedge your bets. You just try and pursue this. First of all, I wouldn't do anything until you get like an offer in your hand. So if Amazon is firm on their internship opportunity and they've sort of sent over the contract for it, okay, then I would take it seriously. What you can do is you can apply for jobs remotely. So if you're going to a different city to take an internship, what you can do is you can put some feelers out and contact employers and things in the city and see if they have, like a professional job there. You know what I mean? So you have a fallback option. So if you're concerned about relocating for an internship, you might have other options in that city too. I mean, that's one thing too. But really, these kinds of decisions, it's not about theory. It's about what your personal situation is, your financial situation and what your ambitions are and your goals. So once again, sorry, I can't really give you a definite answer on that. It just depends on what you're wanting to do. Hopefully that makes sense. If you do have any more details, feel free to share those. Otherwise, once again, that's all I can say. I wish I could be more forthcoming. Daryl says, in your opinion, what is the best job site? I currently use Indeed. I don't know. I mean, they're all pretty bad. Indeed's one of the biggest. But I mean, as to the A, quality of the jobs on there, and B, their validity, I don't know. I don't recommend any of those, to be honest with you. That's not how I recommend people get a job. It's kind of when you try and get your first career job in your life, that's kind of the default thing that people start out doing. It's like saying, okay, which fast food joint do you recommend I apply for? It's like, I don't recommend you get those jobs. I mean, no offense to the people in those jobs, but if you can do better than like working in a fast food restaurant in the kitchen or something, sweeping floors, I'd recommend you shoot for something more. Okay, so that's kind of how I feel about things like Indeed. They're not terrible. There's a need for them. They serve a function, but most professionals don't get their jobs through Indeed. They get their jobs through networking. People don't want to hear that, but it's true. The good news is that anybody, absolutely anybody, can do networking. If you're an introvert, you can do networking. If you don't want to talk to another living soul on the phone or in person, you can do networking. If you don't know a million other people, if you don't know any other people, you can do networking. Okay, that's the great thing. Through the magic of things like LinkedIn, you can reach out, you can see inside of employers, you could contact the people, you could talk to them, you could set up, a real job interview, a meeting where you go grab a coffee together, and the would-be hiring manager asks you about your life and what your goals are and a little bit about the work you've done, and then goes away and thinks like, okay, we need to hire somebody for this role. Should I ask them to come in and interview for it formally? They seem pretty good, right? Do we get along? Yes, we get along. Things like that, right? Much more positive process, and your odds of getting hired are much higher than sending out job applications. They really are. The only exception is if you're doing like the absolute entry level, bottom, low skilled jobs, then things like Indeed are more like they pay off more. So unless you're like, like unskilled labor and you're like 18 years old, I would not recommend any of those. I would recommend that you learn about other methods, other more common methods and more productive methods of getting a job, getting hired. Okay. A lot of people don't want to do this. They just want to do the default thing. But you get what you put in. Navjeet says, "Dear sir, is Canada good for making a professional athletic career if I'm Indian?" I don't know. I don't know about the sort of an athletic career. That's really not my. You could tell by my physique. That's not really my forte. I think it's as good as any other. I mean, I know that in North America, at least a few years ago, the sector in universities, like the faculty or the whatever you call it, the sector discipline that was growing the fastest was physical education. So people being personal trainers, people being athletes, that kind of stuff. I really don't know too much about those type of careers. There are some opportunities here. I have no idea how that works, but if you want to learn about it, I know that there's a ton of like YouTube channels and resources out there that are dedicated specifically to that industry. So presumably you'll be able to find the information. There's also channels out there that talk about immigration. So if you're coming from India, you're trying to go to Canada or any other country, there's a lot of channels that will help you with that aspect of it. Once again, that's not what I talk about here, really. Hanpaul is here. Hanpaul says, but cover letter is largely asked to be submitted here in Alberta. Yeah, sure it is. Yeah. Yes, in certain circles, yes. But not anywhere else. Like as I said earlier, if you're trying to get a job in education or going for an internship, or you're at the entry level for a multinational company, they'll put you through a very formalized interview process. There'll be aptitude tests, there'll be intelligence tests, there'll be, like group interviews, all that silliness. They do all those things. And, part of that is usually like, submit like a 2-page cover letter explaining why you're the right person for the job and, all this kind of baloney. So yeah, they do that in certain industries at the sort of entry level, but nowhere else. And if you're in academia, I think they ask for cover letters like for hire, like all the jobs. But that's just one little industry. It's not a universal thing by far. So that's the reality. Your resume is what matters. It really is. And if you don't believe me on that, go to Indeed. Someone was just talking about Indeed. Look at Indeed and then look at how many job postings require a cover letter. It won't be very many. Most is just your resume. Okay. Patrick says, interview questions regarding what are your hobbies? Any advice on how to properly answer those questions? That's up to you. You see, those questions are more BS questions from recruiters. Those don't matter. Okay? Like, once again, they're trying to imitate how people get jobs at higher levels. Okay? And I've basically described how people get jobs at higher levels. It's through networking. It's by informal meetings. You get together with somebody, you have a coffee with them, you have a discussion. You discuss your industry, your work, where the future is going, what your opinions are on certain things, what's the, what work have you done, what your attitudes are towards it, things like this. And you see if there's a fit, you see if there's compatibility, if that's the type of person that the would-be hiring manager places value on and can get and can work with. Okay. Now, at lower levels where you get recruiters involved, they try and simulate that by asking these idiotic formal questions, by saying, so what are your hobbies? It's like, and then they write down your answer on like pieces of paper, and then it gets looked at by different people. It's like, it's stupid. It has nothing to do with assessing you. There's no way to assess somebody if they are the right candidate for a position based on their hobbies. This is well known. Okay. Now, if you say your hobbies are beating up poor people and littering and harming the environment, then okay, yeah, that's kind of a red flag. But if you say, oh, I do this sport and I love pets, does that mean you'd be a great person for the software developer job? Of course not. It's ridiculous. So you can answer that any way you want, really. It depends on the particular individual that's assessing you. Do they place value on pets? Do they place value on sports? Some people say, yes, you play sports. That means you must know good sportsmanship. Therefore, you'd be a great employee. Other people look at that and they go, sports. Nobody in this entire department of developers plays sports. You wouldn't fit in here. Sorry. So it's entirely up to the individual. Okay. So if I was asked that, first of all, I would never be asked that, but if I was asked that, I would say something just very benign. Just, I've played sports occasionally. I like to get out, go for walks. I like to, collect things, and, I'm interested in history, something like that. There you go. That's about as benign as you could possibly get. I wouldn't jump to the answer where you tell them, well, my hobbies are many and varied, and I don't believe that they're relevant here. I wouldn't do that, because you're sort of like signaling that, it's sort of a turnoff. You're refusing to answer a question. It could signal issues. You might be an argumentative person. You might be trouble. You're always a problem to deal with. Stuff like that. But once again, they can ask you anything under the sun, and people will ask me, well, how do I answer that? They asked me what my shoe size was. What do I say? It's like, there is no right answer to that. Just, you're on your own. It's irrelevant. You like that? Don't you love being treated like this, by being asked these like insulting, stupid questions? And they've got people thinking like, oh, these are serious. I better take these seriously and research what the right answer is. It's like, no, you're dealing with people who don't know what they're doing. And usually people at bad companies ask more of the stupid questions. If you work for a good company, you work for a good boss, they're reasonable, well-grounded, decent human beings. They don't want to make you uncomfortable in an interview. They don't want to ask you anything ridiculous just to see how you react. They don't want to ask you anything ridiculous because they actually use that to decide whether you're going to be an employee or not, right? They don't do that stuff. So there you go. Jen says, did you cover my question above in another video? I was after the cover letter question. Jen. I'm scrolling up, Jen. Oh, here we go. What about the tests often required to submit an application that ask questions that are good in a human, but not a productive worker? I answer as a productive worker and never hear back. Once again, Jen, congratulations. I feel a lot of sympathy for you, because you're at the mercy of idiots that ask stupid crap like this. They got you thinking that like, oh no, this is a legitimate question. I got to learn how to answer. Sorry, Jen. I'm sorry to be so negative today, but you're not crazy. That's a dumb question. And there is no right answer to it. A human and a productive worker are one and the same. You know what I mean? There's not stuff that you would do as a human, like in a good sense, an altruistic sense, that a productive worker wouldn't do. But what they're doing is they're signaling that in their company culture, they regard, a productive worker as someone who doesn't do decent things that a human being would do. They don't help their fellow worker if their fellow worker is, having problems or something. They don't take the time to explain something to somebody else, right? Like, it's stupid. It signals that they care about short-term gain and they care about appearances, but they don't care about long-term, a whole bunch of long-term things. Like, for example, if you don't deviate, you don't help someone because that would take you away from being productive, doing your job. Yeah, what kind of environment do they create there? They create an environment where people don't help each other. Does that sound like a place where people would want to work long-term? Of course it doesn't. So you have a higher turnover because decent people will find a better job than that. And it's not about the money. It's about the fact that they're not treated like a human being. They're not treated decently. And if their bosses will get them in trouble or will take them to task because they helped someone instead of doing their job, that's not the kind of place you want to work. And that's a company that will eventually suffer because of that very culture. That will have a negative effect on their bottom line. Okay, even if it's simply from turnover. Right? Think of it also like you don't help another worker. So the other worker doesn't get help fast enough. So they can't do their job or they can't do their job properly. Does that sound productive to you when you look at the operation holistically? Of course not. It's silly. So that question is idiotic. And if they give you the choice between this or that, it's like, no, you wouldn't do, a normal human, a decent human will be a productive employee. Anyway, hopefully you get the point. Okay, where did I leave off here? So that was Jen. So hopefully that makes sense, Jen. There's a little bit of a tirade there for you. How do you say that? Mayed says, next week will be my first day as a co-op training in a big company. Is there any tips to turn that training into a full-time job offer? Well, you could excel at your training. And then on top of that, you can get along great with your boss, your coworkers, everyone around you. Be super helpful, be super pleasant, be polite. Don't make anybody feel awkward or bad. Try your best to fit in, and that will help. If they do have the possibility of extending a co-op program into a job, then they will want to pick a person like that. Okay? How much they like you is basically the number one factor in who gets hired. Okay? That's just how it goes. It's stupid, but that's how it goes. You're welcome, Lauren. I'm glad you found that somewhat helpful. I was worried that I couldn't really give you anything real there. Excuse me. Navjeet says, Navjeet athlete. I see the connotation now. Dear sir, I like your answer style. Yeah, rambling with ums and ahs, scattered and unending. But thank you. Dear sir, I like your answer style. Straightforward, clear, and understandable. Yes, I would not be the first choice to handle highly complex negotiation situations or interpersonal situations. I come up through operations, but I've learned enough or faked it enough to be able to manage people and try and relate to people who are not like me, people with opposite personality types and different backgrounds. That's the key. But a great speaker, I'm not. El Duque says, and I recognize your name, by the way. Thanks for coming back. What should you do when they ask, what you would like for salary? And you respond with, I'd like to learn more about the position before discussing compensation. Well, I've done like I think the most popular video on my channel that's got like nearly 5 million views is how to answer that. So maybe check that out. How did it go? The first thing you say, there were sort of 3 answers where they ask you, how much money do you need? And the first thing you do is kind of like what you said here is, well, you said I would need more details before I could really answer that, you know. And then like the reason they ask you this is to try and filter you out. They're not trying to have a serious conversation about salary. It sounds like they are, but they're not. The purpose of asking this question, especially early on, is to filter you out based on the fact that you're looking for too much money. That's the reason they ask you. So your answer, the way you handle the question is you try and not give a number. That's the thing, okay? Now, what they're going to try and do is they're going to try and put pressure on you to answer. No, you must give a number. We can't proceed with the interview unless you give a number, right? They don't care about trying to accommodate your number. They just, if it's above a certain threshold or a certain hurdle, they'll just eliminate you, right? It's as simple as that. So, okay, so you've got the first part there. Well, I need to know more. And then the second thing I'm trying to remember, I think the second thing you go to is, well, you know, like, listen, this, you turn the question around at them. This is an approved position. Everybody, all the bosses signed off on posting this job. So the compensation must have been signed off too. So could you give me an idea of the range? You throw the question back at them. You know, now if you're lucky, they'll say, oh, well, this job is going to pay anywhere between, you know, 30,000 and 50,000, you know, whatever. And you go, okay, well, hey, that's fine with me. There you go. Right? So you didn't give a number, but you sort of got through that. They couldn't eliminate you because of your salary. And then the final thing is if they really put the screws to you, they say like, you know, you really must give a number. You have to say something. They won't let you get out of it. Then you give a wide range. You know, you give a low number to a high number. Now, those two numbers are still within the realm of reason, right? But it's like really pushing it, right? Okay. So very low to very high. So the reason you do that is because they can't eliminate you because you said a number that was too high, because you did give a very low number. But then later on, if it gets serious and you're still in the running and maybe you get to the final round and then they offer you the job, you can still go back and demand and ask for more money, because you didn't commit to the low number. You didn't say, I'll do it for this cheap amount. And then you're going back on your word. You said like anything between this and this is kind of fine. You know, like somewhere in there would be good. So you're not actually going back on anything. You're saying what was consistent with what you said earlier. Right? So like that's the general way you handle that. You never give a number. You, at the very least, like if absolutely necessary, you give a range, and it should be a wide range. Okay? Very low to very high, but those two numbers are still reasonable. Okay, check out my video for like a more complete explanation and some other detail about how to do that. Well, if the interview seems to go sour after, I mean, I think you know what that means. That means that you said the wrong thing, right? To them. I mean, it's not any fault of yours. It's not what they wanted to hear, right? Some people, you know, the only thing that would satisfy them would be like you agreeing to basically be a slave and do something that doesn't make any sense. So don't feel bad about it. It's just not what they were wanting to hear. Maybe they're looking to exploit people. That happens a lot. And they're a little upset because they can't exploit you, and that's good for you. You're going to move on to something better, as opposed to just getting snared with this, and it's a dead end, and it will be a bad experience for you. Pavel, I got asked, how old are you? And then they explained that they don't hire young engineering managers. Even though I'm not young, it was insulting. Well, that's kind of a compliment, isn't it? You think I look young? It depends where you are in the world. I mean, in some countries, as I understand it, that's illegal to ask that question. Like those kinds of personal details, I believe in Canada, the United States, and in Europe, different places, they're not allowed to ask that because that's discrimination based on age or, whatever. So, but maybe for the sake of argument, you're in a place where that's not illegal. Okay. Yeah, it is insulting. And as I said before, it's really bad how recruitment and selection, people can be insulting and that's just considered okay. You're doing your job. Isn't that ridiculous? So I guess the question is, how would you respond to that? You got asked that, even though I'm not young, was insulting. Okay, that's more of a statement than a question. Yeah, I agree. That's pretty bad. My dream. I remember my dream. You've been here before. Hey, is that like Fonzie? Hey, like that. I can't do it right, but that's the first thing they teach you when you become a CEO is how to do that convincingly, so that you can open all your keynote addresses with it. Hey, how are you? Long time, man. You just come in here and just say, "What up, dog?" Pretend like the last 3 decades never happened, and then just talk to everyone like that. That's the best thing to do. I guess when you get to my age, you can do that, and people just think you're serious. But do it when you're like 20 years old and throw everyone for a loop. It'll be the latest thing. Shanzi's 2 cents says, I have a question now. Last time I had 3 internal interviews for positions I was qualified for. The only feedback I received was that they wanted different experience. Should I keep trying? Of course. Of course. I mean, do you mean keep trying like at the same place? Yeah. I mean, I don't see any harm. I mean, if you don't have to go to great lengths to try, sure. Why not? Listen, just because you're qualified for something doesn't mean that they're going to pick you. I mean, hopefully everybody realizes that. The reality is, and this is where I get on the side of the recruiters a little bit, although it makes me want to cringe, but it's like you have only one job available and you talk to 20 people who are all qualified. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they're qualified in different ways. This person has a lot of education, way more than you would need for this, but that's good. Another person has way more experience. A third person has like lots of varied experience. They've seen lots of stuff. Another person has like experience just in one place, but they know it really, really well. And then yet another person is wonderful to deal with. Like they could be the ambassador for your company. They could be the head salesperson. They're absolutely a pleasure, a delight to deal with and to interact with. And they have, the requirements. So how do you make a decision? Well, this is the thing. There is no real right or wrong way to do it. It depends on the individuals involved. And sometimes it just comes down, like I said, to random chance. It's random chance, baby. That's what you're up against. So keep that in mind. It's so easy to feel like just because you didn't get something, it's like a rejection of you. It means that you're not qualified. It means that you're no good. That really is false. That's an example of some more weird psychological effects where lack of communication, lack of information leads to bad feeling. This is a principle in business. If you don't communicate with people, if they don't know what's going on, they tend to then get paranoid and fear the worst. Well, here's an example of that. The candidate knows that they weren't selected. They don't know why. They don't know what went wrong. They don't know what the criteria was. So they imagine all kinds of things. They immediately think, oh my God, I'm unemployable. I'm no good. I'm bad as a person. I'm bad as a professional. My resume is inferior. And then you internalize this and it throws you into the depths of depression. That's an illusion. It's all in your mind. Okay. For like 99.9% of all people out there, and the exceptions, you know who you are because you applied for like a CEO role when all you've ever worked for is at McDonald's. You know who you are. But for everybody else, that's an illusion. Okay. You just happen to have what these people over here happen to be looking for, and they look for some weird stuff. They have some very distorted ideas of like who's qualified and who's not, or who would be a good employee and who's not. And you've got a lot of really unpleasant people making really twisted judgments about people too. Okay. And even if you knew that stuff, a lot of people would go away thinking like, oh, I have to change myself to be more like that. No, you don't. You just have to find the employer that's looking for someone like you. And there's a lot of them. You just have to connect with them. That's what this is about. Okay, so Shanzi's 2 cents. Don't internalize, don't take anything away from the fact that you applied for these 3 internal positions and didn't get it. Okay, like, if you want to do something productive and like you really care about this internal position or these internal positions, what you can do is you can try and figure out how stuff works, what the criteria is. That's easier said than done, but make sure that you're like being super helpful, super personable. As I said, usually the way these things come down to is they hire the person that they like the most, regardless of how qualified you are. I mean, everyone has to meet an absolute minimum qualification, but beyond that, they hire who they like. People tend to like people that are like them. Okay, so if you're interviewing with an accountant, then you're a salesperson, they're probably not going to relate to you. If you're an accountant and you're the person conducting the interview is also an accountant, they'll probably like you more because they see, you're an accountant. Yeah, accounting is the right way of looking at the world. You look at it through that lens, yes, I like you. I agree with your opinions, right? So, you know what I'm saying? That's how these things work. So try and be as likable as possible and then try and learn the most about the people that you'd be interviewing with. Because if they're a recruiter, you kind of know maybe what kind of things they're looking for. If they're they're a therapist, you would kind of know the types of things that they're looking for. If they're an engineer, you'd kind of be able to guess at like what type of things that they would place value on. Okay? El Duque says, thank you. I give the answer. El Duque, you were, which one were you? I'd like to learn more about the position. Oh yeah, this was the compensation question. El Duque says, thank you. I give the answer, learning more about the position, and I give a broad range after to remain in contention if they press on wanting an answer. Yes, that's kind of the only thing you can do. They're going to put all kinds of pressure on you to answer. You must answer the question. It's like, you don't have to answer anything. I mean, this is an entirely voluntary exchange. I don't have to be here. I'm here because I chose to be here. And I don't have to answer any question. Now, there may be consequences to that. They don't select you, but they don't, you know what I mean? But you see, it's a double bluff. They rely on that. They sort of use this to ask you all kinds of questions that they know are inappropriate, that they know that they're not entitled to an answer. Because there's a certain amount of pressure, situational pressure, whatever you call it, for you to just answer whatever they're asking. Things would go so much easier for you if you just tell us what we want to know. Right? And then they ask you a question about like, tell me about a time that, you were just not good enough. Tell me about a time that you were not the best employee. They ask you, how do you handle not being good enough? Right? And then you go, oh, well, there's a lot of things I'm not good enough for. I failed at this. I failed at that. I'm no good with this. I'm no good with people, and they go, oh, thank you very much. See, doesn't it feel good? The truth will set you free. Oh, by the way, you've not been selected, right? So, don't let them pressure you into revealing things you don't want to reveal. Now, as we learn more social skills, we learn of ways of not answering questions and not revealing things that don't result in like a lot of awkwardness, a lot of negativity. You can do it in a very professional, very amiable way so it doesn't ruin the mood, but yet you didn't reveal this thing that they were probing for, right? Because if you do, it's bad. Okay, so that's in my opinion, that's probably the single biggest skill anyone can develop in terms of social skills. And it was probably the single biggest social skill that will help your career. Because you got to say no to people. It's just a fact of life. Now, if every time you say no, you make that person hate you and never want to deal with you ever again, that's going to be an issue. The secret is to be able to say no, I'm not going to tell you that, but in such a way that they go, okay, not a problem. Hey, that's cool, right? That's a real skill. I am not a whiz at that, but I have learned a few techniques of how to do that. It's something I think everyone should learn. You could do it like the recruiters do and just lie. That's not a very good way. I'm just following up on my application, and you're talking to a recruiter. The recruiter says, oh, yes, well, that job is on hold at the moment. See how easy that was? Lie makes people go away. If you say, no, sorry, we went with somebody else, the person might get mad. So what we do is we just lie to their face, and it makes our life easier. We don't have to deal with an angry, upset person. There we go. That's a very bad way of dealing with it. There are actually professional ways of doing it. I've told this story before. Once I was rejected for a job, I applied for a CEO job. And I went down to interview with this executive recruiting company. And I interviewed with the president of the company. And I did not get the job. But, long story short, when I walked out of there, I felt good. Because they were such masters of communication and of personal interaction that they can basically say, sorry, you didn't get the job, and, a few other things. And the end result is that you don't feel bad. You don't feel rejected. You don't feel depressed in any way. You actually feel good. You feel like, that was great. I got some really frank feedback about myself that totally made sense, that was done very professionally. And they said a lot of positive things, and, the end result is I feel good. That's what the real masters can do. If you have those kind of social skills, you will go far. Holy crap. Just that. So if there's something I'd encourage people to learn, it's how to do that, how to deliver bad news in such a way, such a professional, positive way, that people get the bad news, but they still think you're great. And without lying or, misrepresenting anything. El Duque. It continues. Thank you. I give the answer, learning about the position, the broad range, if they press on waiting for an answer. Because I watched your previous video and I loved your response, but interviews seem to go sour after. Thanks for sharing your feedback again and remembering me. I love your channel. Listen, if it's a bad outfit that's trying to essentially enslave you, trying to trick you into accepting a position for like such little amount of compensation, it doesn't make any sense for you, and you don't fall for it, they're probably going to seem upset, right? And in that situation, it might be a good thing, right? If they're bad people and they're upset because you didn't fall into their trap, if that's the situation, then that's okay that they're not really happy with you, right? Remember, just being so afraid to push back on anything, it's a double-edged sword. It can be good when it's a great quality when you're dealing with great people. But if you're dealing with nasty, malevolent people that are out to like get at you, you know, you want to say no to those people. You want to push back, right? So just keep that in mind. I don't know which of those it was that you were dealing with, but I'm just saying, just because people were not super happy with you, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. You probably still did the right thing for yourself. Okay? And, you know, a lot of times we don't get jobs, we think it's the end of the world. A lot of times it turns out that the jobs we didn't get, it was actually a blessing in disguise. We didn't get those. And I've been in a couple of high-profile versions of those that I can't really talk about publicly. Dan Fleming says, when it comes to salary negotiation, I know I shouldn't be the first one to say a number, but what if they insist on it? You have to give us a number. Well, it's very simple. You say like, well, at this point, I can only give you a range. It would be from this number to that number. Sorry, that's the best I can do right now. Maybe if we get further down this process, I will be able to give you a number, but at this point, sorry, it's the best I can do. I'm sure you understand. Now you do that, but you have a smile on your face as you're doing it. Right? I'm sorry, I'd like to give you a number, but we're in such an early stage of this. I don't really know very much about this. So unfortunately, all I can do is give you a range. And all I can say is that somewhere between this number and that number, you know, would work for me. There you go. Now, if they don't accept that, you're dealing with bad people. Period. Okay? I mean, you don't want to go in there and have a confrontation with anyone. Nobody likes to do that, except for a few psychopaths out there that do it for fun. But of which, you know, you might be dealing with a couple, who knows? But the thing is, you know, you had to know where the line is drawn, right? You know? Now, if it's a major, major problem, that's sending a red flag to you about them. Like if somebody says, look, I need to know if you're married or not. And you say like, well, you know, I don't really talk about that. That's kind of personal information. It says, yes, but you need to tell us if you're married. I can't continue this interview process unless you tell me if you're married or not. This is what we ask everybody, and everybody tells us the answer. So I'm sorry, I'm going to insist you have to tell me. Right? They'll put this kind of pressure on you. Now, first of all, that's a huge red flag, right? You know, if somebody says that to you, something's wrong with them, okay? Something weird is going on, and it doesn't sound like a situation you want to get into, right? Now, if they're so messed up that they can't see that, that's another issue. So whichever way you slice it, it's bad, okay? So once they do that to you, you know, don't be afraid to say in a professional, polite way and an amiable way, just, well, I'm very sorry. It's just a personal policy. I don't disclose that. So I don't know where that leaves us, but that's my answer. You know, something like that. Now, if they're going to blow the entire interview because you didn't tell them if you were married or not, I mean, that's illegal in a lot of places. In other places, that's just weird. Why the hell would they need to know that? It wouldn't be a normal good thing, right? Dan Fleming, what if they answer a range? No, we need a number. You say, well, like I just said, then your answer would be, well, I'm sorry, at this point, I can't give you a number. I would be pulling a number out of the air. That doesn't make any sense. The best I can do right now is give you this range. You know, I hope that's understandable. That's the best I can do right now. There you go. Okay, this is one of the things that you would practice, incidentally. You know what I keep saying? I keep saying to do practice interviews, mock interviews with a friend or a family member, right? These would be good questions to ask, to practice. How are you going to handle these? Okay. You don't have to like think of every possible weird question they could ask, but just do a couple of these and use that as your template for how you would handle these types of questions. Okay. They could say, we need to know your social security number, your social insurance number, whatever, your passport number. You know, we need to know your mother's maiden name and your date of birth. You know, it's like things, it's like, no, that's personal confidential information. I don't reveal it. A lot of people don't reveal it for good reason. Okay. I'm sorry. If you need to know that, I can't reveal that to you. Hopefully that has no bearing on whether I'm qualified to do this job or not. If they say, yes, it does, then there is a clear problem. NIDOX, is that NIDOX or NIDOX? NIDOX. NIDOX. Hello, and thank you for all your precious help to us, your viewers commenting and liking to help you help more people. Thank you very much, NIDOX or NIDOX. It's very nice of you to say. And I hope that you're getting some value out of this. Well, we've gotten to the end of the questions. There are 29 people here. I'm just going to take a sip of my drink. And if there are any more questions, please ask them in the chat. I will do my best to answer them and not go on a 10-minute rant about them, as I seem to do more often than I'd like to, apparently. But no, we got some great people asking some great questions. I'm drinking Red Bull again today, so it fuels my insane frenzy when it comes to getting excited about silly things that interviewers say or do. Dan Fleming. Once I was asked if I have any questions at the end of the interview. I asked them how they are doing as a business because I knew it must be hard. I worked on a similar product. I thought and still think it's perfectly fine to ask that. Yeah, it's there. Okay, look, Dan, I'm not going to say it's inappropriate or it's a bad question, but if they were not doing very well, okay, and you ask them, so how well are you doing? Or how are you doing financially? It could lead to them feeling awkward. Okay, so for that reason, I wouldn't ask that question. It's not a bad question, but I wouldn't ask it because, you know, if they're doing great, it's an opportunity for them to say, oh, we're doing great right now. Business is really booming, you know, especially in this industry or this sub market or whatever we're doing, or this particular product space. You know, we're doing some great work there. We're actually making inroads and we're doing a lot of innovation and blah, blah, you know, so great. It gives them like a platform to talk about something that they're really excited about, especially if you're talking to a hiring manager. Hiring managers would love to talk about their particular department or division or area of the company. They love to talk about that. You want to get these people talking, you ask them about their job, right? Number one, they're flattered that, like, you know, someone's actually interested in what I do. And then secondly, they have so much they could say about it that it just floods out. So that's great. The problem is if they're not doing well, it can backfire. So for that reason, you know, I wouldn't ask that. You know, instead, if it were me, I would, and you wanted to ask that type of question, I could say, you know, what particular part of the business is, like, you know, are you guys most excited about right now, or something like that, you know? So however it's going, they'll just have positive things to say about it. The other thing is that, you know, you any question that pushes them into having to lie, right? Because they can't discuss it or they can't really reveal that, they're going to feel a little bad because, you know, you sort of push them into having to lie to you, right? So just bear that in mind. It's not the worst question in the world, but, you know, I would choose something else that is a little bit less risky. How do you say that? Lusach? How to get hired for a higher position? Well, the method is completely okay. Higher position. What do you mean by higher position? There's like sort of entry level, there's supervisor level, there's manager level, mid-manager level. There can be higher level managers, but then there's executive level, okay? Like vice president, C-level, all that stuff. If you're talking about those, it's a completely different method of getting hired. There are no recruiters involved. Okay, even like executive recruiters, what they usually do is they just do the grunt work. They don't actually make any decisions. They arrange the interviews. They might ask interviews in preliminary rounds, things like this. But really, it's a conversation between professionals. It's unstructured usually. And they ask different types of questions, a lot more technical questions about like your approach to doing things, how you do your job, like what's the best way to manage a department? How do you know you're getting the accurate information? Like all this kind of stuff. It's more of like free flowing sort of conversations more. And the other element is usually they hire a person, like every candidate is qualified, like every serious candidate is qualified. So that's not really the issue. The issue is you're a decision maker. What types of decisions would you make? And that's based on what type of person you are and what opinions you hold. So a lot of it is exploring those. At this company, we believe we're a very conservative company. We believe in slow product development. We believe in approving everything through all the departments of the company before we make a change. Like that's how we do it. Now, are you the type of person that's how you do it too? Or are you more of like a sort of radical innovator? You just have an idea and then so you implement it immediately and throw it out in the marketplace and start promoting it before it's really gone through 2 years of checks and balances, right? So it's more about who you are and what your opinions are and what your approach is. Okay. And that's where you get into like, what's your reputation? What do you stand for? So there's that whole element of it there. Okay. Those jobs are not posted. They're done all 100% through networking. If you do see those jobs posted, it's just for show. A lot of the times, it's something like over 90% of all those jobs are filled without being posted. So when you do see them, it's usually like to give the pretense that, oh yeah, we're opening it up to everyone. I mean, how often do they post a CEO job and then somebody just applies with a job application, goes through a series of interviews, and then there's a CEO? You don't see that. For good reason. So that's how it's done at a higher level. Oh, okay. Now I see you're asking about the manager position. Okay. Well, it's sort of halfway between that and how you do it at the entry level is a quick answer. They do post a lot of those. And some positions are filled that way, where like someone you don't know applies for the job. They go through rounds of interviews and then they get selected. Sometimes you see that. That does happen. A lot of times, though, it's filled through networking. Okay. In fact, the majority of manager positions are filled through networking. The higher you go up, the more it's networking and the less it's job postings. So, usually if you want to work in, like, say it's a warehouse or a garage or something like that, and you want to be the manager of it, unless you've been the manager of a garage before, they won't believe that you can do it. The only way to really do that, what they would like to have is if you could have an internal candidate be promoted into the manager role. That's good for a bunch of different reasons that a lot of people care about. Number one, you're getting a tried and true person because they've already been there for many years. You know what they're like as an employee. Everybody can attest to what it's like working with them, working for them, working, under them, working above them. You know all of that. So that makes them like a very low risk sort of candidate, right? The only time you wouldn't do that is if you're growing extremely rapidly or you're really looking to bring change. Okay, because the internal candidate, they'll do things how they've seen them done. They're not going to bring any radical new ideas that have never been a part of this organization before. They're never going to start those, right? You get the external candidate to bring change. You get the internal candidate to bring stability and status quo. That's the general rule. Okay? So that being said, I mean, that's kind of the answer. You see basically those two types of hiring people. Sometimes they do it through external HR firms like recruiters. Sometimes it's internal recruiters. And sometimes it's there's no recruiters involved at all. It's just pure networking. It depends on the industry and a bunch of other things too. Hopefully that makes sense. Where do they leave off here? Manager position. There we go. Okay, so I'm just following up your conversation there. So Lucas. Okay, Luke. Yeah, manager, supervisor, and after that, hire. Okay, so I basically answered that, so that's good. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, Dan Fleming. I was kind of turning the table in terms of behavioral questions. I felt like it's a good test how they would answer that. It's the interview where they told me they lost the first recording. Okay. Yeah, listen, just because you happen to interview with a bad company, don't let that influence you into thinking like, oh, you need to master the kinds of questions that they asked you. If they asked you stupid questions, inappropriate questions, disrespectful questions, inapplicable questions, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go away and then rehearse good answers to all those, right? It was just a bunch of idiots that had no clue what they were doing, or they were just malicious, trying to get people to agree to work for them under disingenuous circumstances. You know, not telling them the true nature of the job, not being upfront and honest about how the compensation works, things like that. Okay. Don't let that influence you into thinking you now have to like prepare for those kinds of interviews. You don't. You just have to have a blanket response so that you can do it professionally. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's beyond your control. The only thing you have control over is you then go and apply to good companies. You create opportunities with them, and then it just all falls into place and it works. Han Paul says, for the part of the interview where I can ask a question, would it be okay to ask the question for their hiring because they are expanding or someone leaving and the person left? What? Would it be okay to ask the reason for their hiring, whether they... Yes, you could say that is a legitimate question. That's perfectly fine. You could say, yeah, you know, at the end of the interview, when they say, do you have any questions for us? You say, yes, if I can ask, what's the reason this position is vacant? Did someone retire, or is it a new position? And hear what they say. Yes. I mean, that doesn't really give you anything particularly useful, but, you know, I mean, if they say, oh, it's a new position, or if they say, oh, no, one of our long-term employees is retiring and someone's moved into their job and this is the vacancy created by that, we're trying to fill it. You know, it doesn't really, like, I guess it's nice to know, but it doesn't really reveal anything particularly useful, in my opinion. But it's a decent question. If nothing else, it signals that you're interested and you know what you're doing when you ask that question, or ask any question. My Dream says, so I was once employed for MTHS. Don't use acronyms with me, just spell it out. At a firm, and my contract wasn't renewed because I didn't talk about my personal life at the job and kept it to myself. Well, they're a bunch of idiots. Why should your personal life be a factor for whether you work there or not? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, there are people that have all kinds of weird hobbies, people that are into all kinds of strange things. You know, as long as it's legal, as long as it doesn't cause any harm, what the hell does it matter? As long as it doesn't affect your your commitment or your performance at your job, what does it matter? Why would they need to know that? That's kind of a red flag. Why they would need to know that? Are they trying to control every aspect of your life, including your personal life? My buddy there says, sometimes, or my dream says, what do you think about this? That's what I think about it. Sometimes you have knowledge, but other people have better LinkedIn profile in the case of manager experience, but sometimes are not note experienced more in reality. Sorry, you lost me there. If you could rephrase that, I will be happy to respond to it. Nidox says, feel free to pronounce my nickname however you like. My name is Arthur. Greetings from Poland. I like Arthur. Arthur is good. Like King Arthur, right? That's what you should call yourself. See, I don't know you, but I'm telling you what you need to change your name to. You like that? I could be a recruiter. Don't you like those like personal comments that are kind of insulting that you get? Those are really good. I sell online as self-employed. It gave me a lot of experience in customer service. I want a part-time customer service job. Is that experience transferable to a CV, or it'd be treated as an employment gap? To a recruiter, recruiters are like, I know why they make the decisions that they do, a lot of them. See, resume gaps, the reason why recruiters have an issue with a resume gap is because they think that if no one has hired you, okay, that's a risk because maybe there's something wrong with you. So maybe we shouldn't hire you too. If we were to hire you, you're a higher risk employee because there's a red flag there, right? I mean, it's like, I understand it. I understand the reasoning. But the fact that they don't go any deeper and just leave it at that is silly. It just is. Now, I get that, like, okay, you know, time is precious and you can't go into the details of every candidate. But then again, when you're talking about your short list of candidates that you're going to go deeper to, this is one of the things that you would do. Now, sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. But the point is, with dealing with a recruiter, this is one of the things they look for, and then they interpret as a red flag. This issue does not come up if you're getting a job through networking. And I know I sound like a broken record, but this is one of the many reasons I encourage people to step into that world and learn a bit about it. Okay? Because things like a resume gap just doesn't matter. The reality, Nidox, Arthur, is that you are highly employable. If you have had your own business operation where you sell a product, you do customer service for your own product, I mean, nobody understands better than you the role of the customer service rep. You have an advantage over every other customer service rep that has never run their own business. Right? Now, problem number one, most recruiters are so ignorant of this stuff that they won't recognize that. Problem two is more legitimate. It's that, okay, if you've had your own business on the side, there's a chance that you could either continue working on your own business on the side or start up a new business on the side, in which case your loyalty would be divided between working for us or doing your own thing, and that also makes you a high-risk candidate. Like, you're only doing the day job, the working for the employer, until you get your own business, you know, taking off, ramped up, in which case you'll quit suddenly, right? That's what they're afraid of. They want someone with undivided loyalty. And if they find out that you've been doing stuff on the side in the past, and it's possible that you might be doing it in the future, or they think it's possible you'd be doing it in the future, they can view that as a negative thing. Okay, that's a risk. Not all employers, not all recruiters, not all hiring managers, but some will have that opinion. Okay, that's what you're up against. Okay, I'd hire you in a second if I knew that you weren't just going to immediately leave because you're also doing your own thing at the side, right? Because if you took that out of the equation, you'd be an amazing customer service person, all things being equal. I don't even know you, and already I believe you have a higher chance of being an amazing customer service person because you understand the reality of the business. What's at stake? What is the thing to do, and what's the thing that you should not do, right? You understand that implicitly by living it, okay? So that's some serious talent. I would say if you've done your own thing on the side, pursue that. If it didn't make enough money for you or it was too demanding, try to tweak that and fix that. Okay, I just released the 4th episode. I've been re-releasing these. The series of live streams I did, 5 episodes on basically how to be an entrepreneur, how to start up your own business, how to succeed in a side hustle or just be independently wealthy doing your own thing, and then you don't need to be an employee for the rest of your life. Okay, if that's of any interest to you, check out that series. Okay, it's the latest video I just released this morning. There's a playlist with all 5 episodes in it. The 5th one's going to be out next Wednesday. But check those out. Okay, I would look, like if you can right now, if you have money coming in and you're okay, I would focus on that. I would not try and go back to being an employee working in customer service. To me, that's kind of a step backwards. But needs must. If you need money right now and that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. Okay? But never give up on that. Not many people successfully launch their own business venture. Okay? And it looks like you're at least halfway there. You almost got it. So if you stick with that and you really can grow it, there's a lot of good things about that. Everything from having a less stressful life and a more creatively satisfying life, also to there's no real ceiling on the compensation you can make. If you're good at what you do, you can take it right to the clouds. Hassan, if I'm saying that right, Hassan Syed, what's the purpose of the interview question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Okay, the reason they ask that question is because they want to see if you plan to stay long term. Okay, one of the requirements for a good candidate that they want to select is they don't want to select someone who's like just, they want this job only temporarily, okay? They're only here until something better comes along, this other thing comes along, and then they're out, right? Why would the company employ someone like that? There's numerous disadvantages. In 6 months, you could be right back where we are right now. The job is vacant. We need to hire another person. So why get that type of person? You want someone who's going to stick around. They're going to be happy here and they're going to want to stay. Okay. So that's why they asked that question. Any question about the future, that's what they're asking about. They want to see if you're wanting to stick around. Okay. So there's many forms of this question. This is the most cliched, basic form of it. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Right. But that's what they're checking for. Okay. If you're like a technical type person, you take things literally, you get annoyed with questions like this because it's like, well, how do I know? I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. A lot of things can happen in 5 years. I'm going to be going with the flow and looking out for myself and trying to improve. I mean, hello, isn't that like what everyone would want to do? Yeah. The reason they're asking is to see if you say, I plan to be working in this other area. There we go. Red flag. That's the reason to eliminate you. Okay. That's why they ask it. The answer is some form of, I'm going to be right here. And the problem sometimes is like a double bluff. The problem is saying I'm going to be right here in this job means that like, oh, you have no ambition. So you get around that by saying, well, I see myself, being promoted based on my performance. There you go. Covers all your bases, in my opinion. J Herbert. You should have just called yourself J Herbert. I would just go with Herbert. That like, how many real badass people do you know called Herbert? There's a lot. Is it okay to take notes and look at them in person interviews? Yes, it is. Within reason. Don't read answers verbatim off a paper, okay? And don't be looking down the entire time, okay? But occasionally, glancing at notes is not a problem, okay? If they say something and you write a couple of keywords down while they're talking, that's really good. Okay, so don't. Now, if you're talking about like a pen and paper, sure. If you're talking about on a device, it could go either way, because the general rule is that you're supposed to stow your device, stow your phone, stow your tablet, get them off the table. You know, it's a negative thing if you keep them on the table or you keep looking at them, okay? Because they don't know what you're looking at. Are you recording the conversation? Are you more interested in something going on your phone than you are in this interview, this interaction? So, you know, I wouldn't do it on a device, even though it seems like, you know, you're from the Stone Age. It's very passé, but I would do it pen and paper. Just have a little notebook or some post-it notes, whatever. And occasionally, you could write down a few keywords, and occasionally you could maybe consult some notes, just as a glance. But you're still maintaining eye contact with them. Hassan Syed, is it okay? This was the purpose of the 5-year question. Is it to gauge your long-term career interest at the company, capacity for long-term goal setting, risk in terms of candidate rocking the boat, etc.? I think you're thinking much further ahead than they are when they ask this. All they want to know is, are you going to stick around or not? And the only thing they're really looking for here are clear red flags. Like you said, like if they ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And you say, well, I don't know, hopefully I'll have come out of this line of work and gone into my dream job of doing this. That's a great way to fail that question, is to like say something like that. Okay. That's all they're looking for. As long as you don't say, it's a negativity question. They're not asking for like lots of positive detail. They're looking for a negative red flag. That's what they're probing for. Okay, so that's what they're looking for. Dan Fleming, how do you answer the question, why do you want to leave your current job? Is it okay to say I'm looking for a new job? I've done like videos on all of these, so you guys should really check those out. I answer them much more, first of all, much more coherently and much more completely in my videos than I'll do here off the top of my head. So just go and check those out. Is it okay to say I'm looking for new challenges, and based on the description, this job seems to be what I want to do? Yeah, that's one of the better answers. This is another negativity question. It's a pass-fail question. Just like the last one, just like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You know, did you give any negative red flags? No? Okay, you passed. This is the same type of question. Why did you leave your last job? They don't really care why you left, other than if you give any real red flags that signal something bad about you. Okay? For example, if you say, oh, I was fired, you know, for incompetence, right? It's like, there's a red flag. Now you're a high-risk employee. If someone who's worked with you found you incompetent, chances are we would find you incompetent too if we hired you. So, sorry, you fail that question, right? So the great way to just avoid the entire thing is just to say, I'm ready to do more. I was ready to do. Why did you leave your last job? I was ready to do more. And, you know, then you could do your thing that you're suggesting, where you sing praises of this job and say like, well, the job description looked like really intriguing. You know, there's a lot of interesting things in this, and I feel I'm really ready to do this kind of thing. You know, you could extend it, but the bottom line is just, I'm ready to do more. Don't say anything negative. Don't badmouth your boss, your old boss. Don't badmouth your old employer. Don't badmouth yourself. You know, even if you were fired for incompetence, Hey, maybe it's justified. Maybe they hired you for one job and then over time they changed your duties till they got you doing something completely different that you have absolutely no interest in doing and you have no training for. And then at the end, it just didn't work out and then they fired you. Still, I mean, you could argue that's still not your fault, right? The bottom line is that what you did with some other employer is none of their business. They don't have the right to that information. And this is reflected in at least like most countries in the world that I'm familiar with. There's no way of this employer getting that information if you don't just freely disclose it, right? You know, they can't look up in some government database why, you know, what your employment history was and why, what was the official cause of your leaving that job. They can't see any of that. That's why they're asking you, right? You know, and if there is something negative in your past here with your last employer, I would make sure that, you know, you don't give them as a reference. You know, if you need an excuse for that, you could always say like, well, I'm still sort of currently employed there or something. I don't know. Maybe make it out like that. So it's like, I can't tell them that I'm leaving. That could be bad for me. You know, so that's the reason I can't have you guys calling my boss to get a job reference for me, right? That's a reasonable and legitimate thing to do. A lot of people do that anyway. I'm going to have to wrap this up soon. It's been a couple hours, but we'll go through the questions we have here. Where was I here? Okay, Mark Brown. Mark Brown, that sounds familiar. I think you've been here before. I just had a contracting role cut short by 5 months due to downturn. It's a kick in the teeth. Yeah, it is. I have my own business in contracting, but other clients are hard to acquire. Okay. Is there a follow-up? Okay, well, maybe there's more to that. Okay, my buddy Lukács. Sometimes LinkedIn profiles look better because someone worked long on a higher position and use it as an advantage to change company or get higher position in other company, okay? In reality, it doesn't reflect how weak managers they are in real life. Of course not. That's why you go through this process where they try and verify, right? They verify everything. They verify who you are as a person. They verify your work history and educational qualifications. They verify, you by contacting personal references. And a lot of, somebody asked earlier, what's the process for hiring like managers? One of the differences is that they ask for a lot more references, especially if you're an executive. In my experience, they ask for like 9 references. They ask for 3 people that were coworkers of you. They ask for 3 people that were subordinates of you, like you were their boss. And they ask for 3 people who were your boss, your superiors. So that's an attempt to try and get a sort of well-rounded picture of how you are as an employee, right? Now, that has its limits. Like, you can do that. That gives you some information, but at the end of the day, nothing will really give you anything better than a personal recommendation by somebody you trust. That's why they hire through networking, because this person at the job interview, this candidate, they could be lying through their teeth. You have no idea, right? But if someone that you trust, someone who's like say a divisional vice president of the company says to the CEO, "Oh yeah, you should hire that person. I've worked with them. I worked with them for 5 years. Here's their strengths, here's their weakness, but overall, I think they're good. I recommend them." The CEO goes, "Oh, well, I've worked with you for 15 years and you know what you're doing and I trust your opinion. So if you say they're good, I'm satisfied," right? That's usually how that goes. That's why people hire through networking, because they don't want to take a risk on somebody that's a complete stranger, right? That's why it's a powerful thing. Now, think about this in reverse. I just want to make a point here. Think about this in reverse. If the divisional vice president says, you need to get this person to the CEO, and the CEO trusts them, do you really need to delve into just exactly what experience they have, exactly what all their references say about them, exactly, do the background check and all that? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still good to do, but do you need that? That becomes far less important. The bottom line is that this person that you've worked with for 15 years that you trust and you get along with great and you know them inside out, they said, get this person, right? So that's the power that has. Once you get that, everything else is borderline irrelevant. Dan Fleming, off-topic question. I don't think anything's off-topic here. Off-topic question at the end of today's cast. What do you think about Jordan Peterson? I don't know too much about Jordan Peterson. I've seen a couple of his videos of him talking. Seems like a pretty bright guy. He was an ex-professor, but he gets himself embroiled in a lot of political controversy. And just judging from some headlines that I've seen of him and his position, I'm not really 100% sold. So that's all I can say. I don't really know him or know of him that well. I mean, the one sort of connection is, hey, he's a fellow Canadian, but that doesn't say much. Super Green Samurai. I'm interviewing for a position with a sign-on bonus. Is it wise to ask about those details in the first interview? No, not in the first interview. If you do, that makes it look like that's the number one priority for you, and that leaves a bad first impression. The first impression you want to make with them is that you are excited, you are interested, you're passionate about doing this, and it's all positive. No problems, no issues, all positive. Okay, you're just happy to be here. And you're excited to see where this goes. Period. So have a little bit of restraint and see where the interview process goes, see what the signing bonus is at the end. And as always, you don't negotiate anything, meaning you don't discuss it really, you don't discuss it seriously until after they've made the offer. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, another couple of questions here, and that's it. Nidox, thank you for the good words, sir. I needed that. You inspired me to push harder. I will not give up and work harder with your tips from the new playlist. I will update on my progress in future streams. Yes, not a problem, Nidox. Listen, I'm just giving it to you straight what the situation is, okay? That's just how job search goes. It's a very emotional time. People feel very fragile. They're out of their comfort zone. They're very unsure of themselves. And, it's like, it's sort of the lowest point in your life in terms of like self-confidence, or it's one of the lowest points in your life in terms of your self-esteem and your self-confidence. And a lot of it's artificial, as evidenced by the fact that as soon as people get jobs, then they feel like $1 million. They feel like, they're not an imposter. They deserve to be there. They're happy. They have their sense of self-worth back. It was all just an illusion that you didn't have that before, right? That's the reality. Wish you much success, the viewers. Yes, thank you everyone for being here. You guys are awesome. I will be here again next Wednesday, same time, another live stream. In the meantime, keep trying to improve yourselves, work hard, learn all you can, practice all you can, and sooner or later you will come out on top if you do that, okay? Thanks very much. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next week.